Hotel. Welcome in, welcome in. Come on in, everybody. Come on in, everybody. Hey, make sure as you enter the building, you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And make sure you hit that notification bell so you can be notified every time I go live and every time I drop a new video. If I don't do it live, you will immediately receive a notification. Thank all you guys for tapping in. I'm your host, Matthew Daniels. Welcome back to Matthew Daniels TV. I am the writer, the author, the scribe, the chief scribe, and I am the bookworm. But I'm not just a bookworm world. I am the real bookworm. Make sure you get it right. And as always, may your name, family, may your name live on forever, and may your memory never die. I got a real good one for y'all today. We're going to be doing another story time. Y'all see the title? We're going to be talking about the South Carolina man murdered for conjuring and the dangers of hoodoo. I've been taking a lot of time lately to cover different aspects of hoodoo and what our ancestors had to say about hoodoo. We've been talking about conjuring. We've been talking about root work. We've been talking about spells, amulets, potions, and we've been talking about the religious and spiritual practices of our ancestors on these slave plantations. And one thing that I want to highlight in this video right here is I want to let all practitioners, anybody that may be a practitioner of hoodoo, who may be involved in root work, who may be involved in conjuring, etc., etc. I just want to issue a slight warning, only because sometimes people fear what they do not understand. Okay, people fear what they do not understand, and sometimes our ancestral practices, they have been described in such a way in this modern time, and they have been described in such a way in the media to where is often associated with negativity, evil, demonic work, unrighteousness, unholiness. It is explained and described in a way to where the an individual who may proclaim that they are a practitioner of hoodoo or a practitioner of conjure or someone that involves themselves in root work, it has been displayed in the media to such a degree that individuals that hear that may begin to think something negative about an individual. So what I want to do, I want to take out a little time and give you guys this story about the South Carolina man who was murdered for conjuring and for practicing hoodoo, because there are, in essence, two aspects to conjuring that we have to take a look at. You can use it to heal, or you can use it to harm. Okay, you can use it to contact and utilize the power from good spirits, or you can use it to contact and utilize the power from evil spirits. And a lot of times when you look into the discussions about hoodoo and the discussions about conjuring of our ancestors, you're going to start running into stories where they talk about the bad conjure man or the bad conjure woman, and they'll talk about how someone put a spell on someone else, or they conjured someone else, or they put a curse on someone using hoodoo, and then the individual would have to go to another hoodoo practitioner or another conjurer to defeat that bad conjure that was done in the beginning. So there's inherently a duality to the system of hoodoo in and of itself. There's a good aspect and there's a bad aspect. Now these aspects, this good and bad, this duality, this righteous and unrighteous, this evil and good, this hot and cold, this battle that can take place in the spiritual realm between the good practitioner of conjure and the bad practitioner of conjure. It's like a tale as old as time. Even when you look into any ancient civilization that practice what they call magic, right? But what we're calling hoodoo and conjure, there has always been a dual nature to it. It could be used to bless and it could be used to curse, whether or not they use those particular words or not. So what I want to do with this video, I'm going to go into some more information about hoodoo and conjuring and root work. I'm going to go look at some more history about our ancestors on these shores, and I'm going to show you guys a first-hand account of a conjure man who was murdered for conjuring. This guy, he took the negative approach, and he was using conjure to negatively affect several individuals, and those individuals who were negatively conjured, they lashed out. They lashed out in a murderous rage, and instead of going to a good conjure doctor to break the spell, they took this man's life. So I want to let this kind of be a cautionary tale for individuals who are dabbling in these arts and who have ideas of trying to use this information, use this knowledge, use this spiritual system to bring harm on other people. If you put that kind of negativity out into the universe, out into the world, it may come back on you in very bad ways. So let's get into it. We're going to be, again, this is story time. We're going to be talking about the South Carolina man murdered for conjuring, the dangers of hoodoo, or more specifically, the dangers of bad hoodoo. Let's get into the PowerPoint, family. Let's get into the information. Now, the story that we're going to be talking about, it took place in a place called York County, South Carolina. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, I placed maps on the screen so you can see where South Carolina is in relation to the other U.S. states, and where York County is in the actual state of South Carolina. So you can kind of focus your mind down into the area where this took place. Now, according to a basic Wikipedia search, they say that York County, where this murder took place in the past, is a county on the north central border of the U.S. state of South Carolina. As of the 2020 census, the population was 282,090, making it the 7th most populous county in the state. Its county seat is the city of York, and its most populous community is Rock Hill. The county is served by one interstate highway, Interstate 77. Now, in relation to the pre-colonial and early colonial history of South Carolina, because South Carolina was actually inhabited prior to the creation of the United States of 1776, its history actually goes back to when there were 13 colonies in what we're calling the United States of America today. Its history goes way back then. And in fact, I'm going to show you guys some evidence that the history of our ancestors in this colony, in this area that we call South Carolina, goes back even further than the colonial period. But look, it says with a population of nearly 6,000 at the time of first European contact, the native inhabitants, the Catawba, were primarily agriculturalists. Hernando de Soto passed through the area in the 1540s in his search for gold. Several decades later, Juan Pardo recorded his observations of a predominant Native American tribe, later confirmed to be the Catawba, in the vicinity of present-day Fort Hill, east of the Catawba River. So we see that before the Europeans actually settled in that area and it became one of the 13 colonies, it was already inhabited by native individuals, right? And they give the name of the tribe that was there. And we also know that during the colonial period of the area that we call it South Carolina today, slave labor goes back to the beginning of the founding of that particular colony. But our history in that area, our history of our ancestors, not the natives that was already there, but the enslaved Africans, the ones who actually created the system of hoodoo and conjure, goes back further than the colonial period. And I figured since we were talking about South Carolina, it would be interesting to share some of that information with you guys. Okay, so this is an article that I got offline that is going to give us some of the information of our ancestors in the area that we call South Carolina, and to explain that this area was home to one of the earliest slave revolts on record. Okay, our people were fighting for their freedom from the moment that they touched these shores. There was never a time our people weren't fighting, and there was never a time our people were not trying to get free. I often look at it as in there were several battles in the Great War. The Great War that lasted for several centuries, where our people were constantly fighting and trying to get free and fighting for their freedom. Okay, there was never a time where we simply accepted our fate. That's false. And our ancestors did not wait on the Civil War to actually free them. The freeing of our people was a continuous war that was fought even prior to the colonialism, the time of colonialism. And in the area that we're going to be talking about, this murder of the Hoodoo doctor, we have evidence of one of the earliest slave revolts on record. Look what it says. This article says, in August 1619, 20 and odd Negroes were captured twice and carried to the coast of Virginia. Because of this, 2019 is remembered as the 400th anniversary of slavery in the United States. Now, that time period of 1619 is known to most people. And they actually took them to Jamestown, Virginia. A lot of the history books and whatnot, when they talk about the beginning of our enslavement in the Americas, they're going to reference 1619, and they're going to reference those 20 Africans who were captured and brought over to Jamestown, Virginia. Now, interesting fact, Jamestown, Virginia was actually named after King James. The King James, who has his name on the King James version of the Bible. And around the same time that he was funding the creation of a settlement named after him, Jamestown, Virginia, is around the same time that he was having his translation of the Bible written. If you notice, when you look it up, they're going to tell you that the King James version of the Bible is the 1611 King James version of the Bible, meaning in 1611 they finished his translation and it was actually presented to the people. The 1611 King James version of the Bible. Now, 1611 is the year. That's the date. And if we look at the source that I have on the screen, in August 1619, right? 8 years after 1611 is when the 20 Negroes were brought to Virginia, Jamestown, Virginia, and enslaved in the area that was named after the King James, who has his name on the Bible. Look, they go on to say, however, American abduction of men and women from Africa actually dates to November 1526. The location, South Carolina. In September of that year, Lucas Vasquez de Leon, a wealthy Spaniard come slave trader, arrived for the second time to the shores of what would become, more than 2 centuries later, 200 years later, South Carolina. Landing along the shores of the PD River, he established a nascent village, San Miguel de Guadalupe. A month later, he was dead. And 2 months later, the African slaves he held captive revolted, effectively ending the settlement for these Spaniards. So one of the earliest slave revolts on record actually took place in 1526, when some of our ancestors was brought over here and enslaved in the area that would later become known as South Carolina. And so you can imagine when those slaves revolted and they basically destroyed that settlement, it was ended. They did not have the means to get on a boat and go back to Africa. They had to settle where they were at. Now, the source doesn't actually go into it, but one can imagine they most likely interacted with the native population, that tribe, the Catawba that I just showed you guys about, and most likely assimilated into assimilated into that tribe. And even when our ancestors came over here and they were enslaved during the colonial period of South Carolina, remember, our ancestors, they were always trying to get free. They were always revolting. They were always escaping. And several of them, when they would escape, before actually going to the north on the Underground Railroad was a thing, they would escape off into the woods. They would escape off into the various areas that were not populated by the invaders, by the colonizers, and they would intermingle themselves and intermix themselves with a lot of the native populations. And even when you talk about hoodoo, conjuring, root work, it all deals, well, a lot of it deals with herbal remedies, knowing the layout of the land, knowing which roots to use for healing, which plants, which trees, which shrubbery, which herbs can be used for healing and can be used in ritualistic practices. And a lot of this information was brought directly from Africa, but since the Americas, is different fauna, there's different plants, there's different flowers, there's different roots. Some of the Native Americans helped our ancestors to understand the lay of the land on these shores. So from the earliest times, right, from the earliest times, even from before the colonial period, our ancestors were here, right? Our ancestors were rebelling and revolting and intermingling with the native populations. And when South Carolina became a thing, our ancestors were there right from the very beginning. And so we can understand that hoodoo, conjuring, root work, things of that nature has a long history in South Carolina. Okay, a long history in South Carolina. Hoodoo has been practiced. Now, before we actually get into the story and before we get into the story time, I'm going to give you guys just a little more insight and history into hoodoo. Like, how do we know that hoodoo was practiced in South Carolina by our ancestors? Now, we already know that hoodoo is root work. We've already been covering that in several videos, and I mentioned it here. And so what I want to do now is I want to show you guys our ancestors' attestation to their use of plants, herbs, natural remedies to heal themselves. And that in and of itself is an aspect of hoodoo. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to the South Carolina slave narratives, or the South Carolina oral histories, and we're going to look at something that ancestor Hector Smith had to say about living on a plantation in South Carolina. Now, the ancestor says, "Oh, the peoples didn't never worry about no doctor then. They doctor was in the field at that time, at that day and time. I'm gonna tell you just like I know it. All the older peoples used to get the herbs out the old fields for their remedies." Now, root work, conjuring, it's all about using roots, herbs, and plants for medicinal purposes. But remember, it can be used to heal, or it can also be used to harm. There is a duality when you're talking about conjuring. So when you look into the ancestors' words and they tell you that the people went out into the fields, the older people used to get herbs out of the fields for their remedies, you got to also understand that at the same time, individuals was using some of these same herbs to negatively conjure people. And sometimes those negative conjures got them in trouble. Look, the ancestor goes on to say, "My master and my missus was the ones what doctor mostly in them times. Used to get old field ringdom, which smell like this here mint, and boil that and let it steep. That was good to sweat a fever and cold out." So the ancestor was about to go into some of the herbs and roots that they used and what did they use it for. So we're going to get kind of a real world glimpse on the medicines that our ancestors used in conjuring in South Carolina. The ancestor says, "That what was good to sweat a fever and cold out you. Then there was life everlasting tea that was good for a bad cold, and cherry bark what would make the blood so bitter, no fever never couldn't stand it. Them what had the rheumatism had to take that lion's tongue, or what some people's call wintergreen tea, and some of the time they take pine top and mix with the herbs to make a complete cure. Oh, they make it bad as they could as to weaken the case. Another thing that been good for the rheumatism was that red oak bark that they used to bathe the limbs with. Willow tea was something good for chill and fever, and catnip and sage tea was the thing for babies. Now, because Hoodoo and Conjuring also talks about the spirit world, and it talks about putting blessings and curses on people, you're going to notice that a lot of individuals try to make it seem like our ancestral practices are nonsense. They try to make it seem like our ancestral practices are superstitious. It's not real, right? It makes no sense. And they would have you believe that their solution to our problems are better than our ancestral solutions to our problems. But when you actually do the research and you start looking into these names of these herbs and plants that our ancestors used, when you actually do the research and find out what these herbs and these plants were, and you look at the modern uses for these herbs and these plants, you see that some kind of way, without having access to a laboratory, without having access to reading of scientific journals, without being able to go on Google and Google what this herb does, what this root does, our ancestors' knowledge of the roots and plants and herbs that they were using and what they were using it for was right on the money. It was right on the money. Now, what I want to do, I'm going to give you guys an example of that. Right? I'm going to give you guys an example of that. Look, check this out. The ancestor says in that oral history / slave narrative that I just read to you, the ancestor says that there was life everlasting tea that was good for a bad cold. Now, here's the part I want you to pay attention to. In cherry bark, what would make the blood so bitter, no fever never couldn't stand it. So look, the ancestors are telling us that they use cherry bark for fever. Now, when you actually do the research online, I got this information off healthyfocus.org, the benefits of wild cherry bark. Look what they say. If you would like to try a safe and natural remedy for feelings of stress or mild anxiety, the best way to use wild cherry bark is in tea form. Tea form. The ancestors just talked about using this stuff as a tea. Like many herbal teas, it is an excellent option to calm the nerves without worrying about the side effects and dependence associated with strong pharmaceutical sedatives. The relaxing nature of wild cherry bark tea can also help ease muscular tensions, cramps, and what? Headaches. So in today's world, they're confessing that wild cherry bark used in tea form, right? Tea form is the best way to use it. And if you use this wild cherry bark in tea form, it can also help with headaches, among other things. It's a natural remedy for other things, but the current information says that cherry bark in tea form is good to medicate headaches. And what did the ancestors say? Cherry bark, what would make the blood so bitter, no fever never couldn't stand it. What is a fever? A headache. And the ancestors was talking about using this in tea form. So how did the ancestor know this? For one, how did they come across this information? And is conjuring, root work, hoodoo, is it superstition if traditional medical science is confirming some of what the ancestors already said, right? What the ancestors already said is you can use cherry bark in tea form to deal with a fever, and the modern day information is confirming that. So And really, honestly and truly, that shouldn't be too far-fetched to understand, because we know before there was Tylenol, Advil, et cetera, medicine came from the earth. All medicine came from the earth. Now, everybody that's trying to give you, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a naturopathic healer, none of that. I'm a writer, I'm a scribe, and I study history. That's my field. But I'm also I'm a researcher as well. I do a lot of research. So what I'm saying is, all medicine came from the earth. All medicine came from plants, herbs, roots, trees, flowers, things like that. Everything that healed the human body came from the earth. That was the only place you could get medicine from, was from the earth. So it's funny to me how an individual would try to say that our ancestral practices is superstition, when they're talking about using herbs to heal or to harm, when we know 100% that that's where medicine comes from. It's like a mind game that they try to play on us, just to make us downplay our ancestors' knowledge. Oh, they were slaves. They weren't slaves. They didn't know anything. They weren't even human. They were stupid. They were ignorant. But modern day information is confirming what the ancestor had to say about cherry bark. Now, this is in South Carolina. Now, look, check this out. In another South Carolina slave narrative / oral history, we have the words of ancestor Henry Ryan that gives us some more insight into the root work practices of our ancestors in South Carolina. Now, these are highlighting some of the good uses of the root work, but remember, root work can be used for good or can be used for evil, and we're going to be going into a conjurer who used it for evil and how it subsequently got him murdered. And so beware of what you use this information for. But look, the ancestor says, when the slaves got sick, they had when the slaves got sick, they had doctors and used old herbs. The use of herbs is root work. Jerusalem ore was a kind of herb for children to build them up. And there was field grass roots and herb roots, which was boiled in tea drunk for fevers. Again, talking about tea drunk for fevers, probably the same cherry bark tea that the other ancestor mentioned. Look, and Pomeranian tea, which was drunk too. Sometimes they would hang garlic around small boys and girls' necks to keep away any kind of sickness. Now, is this superstition? Is this nonsense? Is this the ramblings of an ignorant, illiterate slave? Or is this somebody who has knowledge about plants, herbs, and roots, knowledge that we don't know how they actually acquired it, but we know that they had it? Look, check this out, family. Right here, remember, it says Jerusalem ore was a kind of herb for children to build them up. So they gave Jerusalem ore to children to build them up. And some people would say that's superstitious nonsense. You need to take them down to the doctor and have the doctor look at them and give them some prescription drugs. So the first question we're going to ask ourselves is, what the heck is Jerusalem ore? And once we know what Jerusalem ore is, then we're going to ask, why would the ancestors say give it to children specifically to build them up? Now, Jerusalem ore is Jerusalem artichoke. Okay, Jerusalem ore is Jerusalem artichoke. Now, look, the Jerusalem artichoke, also called sunroot, sunchoke, wild sunflower, topinambar, or earth apple, is a species of sunflower native to Central North America. It is cultivated widely across the temperate zone for its tuber, which is used as a root vegetable. Now, some of the names for these roots and herbs that our ancestors used, they're labeled as different things today. So we have to do some research to figure out what they were talking about. But the Jerusalem ore that our ancestor mentioned is the Jerusalem artichoke. And remember, the ancestor said that it was given to children to build them up. Now, when you look this up online, I basically did a Google search, and you know how sometimes nowadays with the search engines, they also have AI powered search engines that can give you answers or that can give you information based on the questions that you ask. So the source for this, what I'm about to share you guys, there were several articles that quoted the same thing, but the source that I'm posting is the Microsoft AI software that answers questions that you type into the search engine. Okay, look, check this out. What they say about the Jerusalem artichoke or the Jerusalem ore. Jerusalem artichokes, also known as sunchokes, can be introduced to babies. They went straight to children. Can be introduced to babies as soon as they are ready to start solids, which is generally around 6 months of age, young baby. These knobby tubers are a great source of iron, potassium, vitamin B6, choline, magnesium, and phosphorus, all of which support a baby's overall development. Modern science has concluded that you can start giving this Jerusalem artichoke or this Jerusalem ore to babies around 6 months of age. And it is a great source of iron, potassium, vitamin B6, choline, magnesium, and phosphorus, all of which support a baby's overall development. Look, when they talk about the age considerations, they say some sources recommend waiting until babies are at least 8 to 10 months old before introducing Jerusalem artichokes to watch for any signs of of digestive discomfort. So yes, there can be some negative, like with anything, the side effects. There can be side effects to any type of medicine or any type of natural remedy. But the modern understanding of Jerusalem artichokes is that it can be introduced to babies to what support a baby's overall development. Look what the ancestor said. Jerusalem ore was a kind of herb for children to build them up. Overall development, build them up, given to children. You can give it to them as young as 6 months old. Don't get much more of a child than that. So ask yourself, how did the ancestors know this, right? And then ask yourself, if the ancestors had this type of a knowledge on plants, roots, and herbs that are validated today using modern science, this ancestor had no way of testing the vitamin content of the Jerusalem ore, the Jerusalem artichoke. How would the ancestor know? But the ancestor knew that you could give this to a baby to build them up. They knew this. But some people that try to tell us that our ancestral ways, our ancestral science, our ancestral knowledge is superstition. It's superstition, but it can be verified. And look, check this out. The ancestor also says sometimes they would hang garlic around small boys and girls' necks to keep away any kind of sickness. Now, to the untrained eye, an individual will think, oh, that sounds like you trying to keep vampires away. It's nonsense. Nonsense, superstitious ideas of the ignorant slave. But let's look into it, family. Can garlic keep sickness away? Look, I got this off of healthline.com. Look at the question that they posed. Can garlic help prevent colds and flus? Prevent, keep away. Garlic has shown promise as a treatment for preventing colds and flu. Studies have shown that garlic may reduce the risk of becoming sick in the first place, as well as how long you stay sick. It may also reduce the severity of symptoms. What did the ancestors say? Sometimes they would hang garlic around small boys and girls' necks to keep away any kind of sickness. So the understanding is that garlic can keep sickness away, can prevent you from getting sick. And in modern times, what they're confessing is studies have shown that garlic may reduce the risk of becoming sick in the first place, preventing sickness, preventing illness. Now, there is a lot of underlying truth to the practices of our ancestors. An individual would just have to research it to see. So I did all that to build up to the actual story that we're going to be dealing with, the murder of the conjure man in South Carolina, just to show that in South Carolina itself, our ancestors have been there for a long time. They had ample time to learn the lay of the land, learn the herbs, learn the roots, learn the fauna, learn what's good and what's not. And once they learned what was good and what's not, they implemented that into the practices of hoodoo and the practices of conjure, right? And some individuals use that conjuring for good, and some individuals use that conjuring for bad. And sometimes the individuals that used it for bad, it turned out bad for them as well. Now, this is a headline I got out of the New York Times, and it was posted April 17th, 1904. So this is like 120 years ago, right? 120 years ago this took place. And the title of the article said, Victims of the Conjure Box and the Specie Piece, which I believe the Specie Piece is a lot of times our ancestors, they spoke in like broken English. Even now we speak in Ebonics. So I'm thinking what they were actually saying was special piece. And you're gonna see why I think that in a second. And you're gonna see why it actually makes sense. But they say superstitions of Southern Negroes sometimes lead to the murder of innocent people. Now, this murder that I'm going to show you guys is not the only murder that took place over bad conjuring. It's just the one that I'm trying to highlight for you guys today. So let's get into the actual article and let's see what it says. Look, the article says, Southern Negroes still believe in conjure doctors, especially in the rural districts. The jack, the conjure bag, the conjure bottle, and the conjure box work many wonders. The doctor with the herbs, the jack, and the conjure rod is held in great awe by his fellow men, and those who know him to be a conjure trickster give him a wide berth. No Negro would dare cross him. Many tragedies in Negro communities are directly traceable to the deeds of some hoodoo doctor. He throws spells on his victims by the use of the bottle, the bag, or the box. The jack is used in diagnosing cases. It is nothing more than a piece of silver or copper coin capable of a very high polish. Now, we're finna get into the details of this, but the jack is something that is an item used for divination in certain hoodoo practices, obviously right here in South Carolina. And it was used to diagnose cases, to diagnose what was wrong with the individual who came to the hoodoo doctor or the hoodoo practitioner with their problems, and also to diagnose who put the bad conjure on them. Okay, you would have individuals that would do bad conjuring to somebody, and then they would have to go to another conjurer who would perform a good conjure to get the bad conjure off of them. Now, in order to know what they should do and who put the bad hoodoo or bad conjure on the person, they would use an item that they call the jack. And a jack is a item used for divination. Okay, that's actually called divination. Look, the doctor calls it his special piece, or what I'm assuming is his special piece. This is what he's trying to say. The jack will not work for nothing. Money makes it move. If a Negro has queer feelings and has cause to think someone has thrown a spell over him, he goes to a hoodoo doctor for advice. The doctor consults his jack to ascertain the trouble and the cause of the same. After hearing the patient's story of the malady that has fallen upon his body, the doctor takes his jack from his pocket and retires to some secret place for a consultation with that dreadful and all-powerful instrument. Soon, the doctor returns and tells the conjured person to look in the jack, and behold, the image of the one who worked the spell, and at the same time suggests the name of the person he thinks guilty. Sometimes the spell can be removed by medicine, but unless the cause is removed, also the spell will return. So the divination item known as a jack was usually a piece of silver or copper. It was either a silver coin or a copper coin that could be shined to a high polish. And what the hoodoo practitioner would do, they would go into some special area of their home or wherever they at, and they said that they would basically, I guess, like, rub the coin, do something special with the coin, and then they would look at it, right, after, performing the ritual, saying the words, probably asking the coin, what's wrong with this person who did this to them, something of that nature, inquiring. That's what divination is. And you're inquiring for some type of special supernatural knowledge that you can't get any other kind of way. When they would look at this shiny piece of silver or this shiny copper coin, they would begin to see in it the image of the individual who performed the bad conjure. Now, people will again try to say that our ancestral ways is superstition, and they would try to say that that this special piece or this special piece using a jack for divination is like a con game. But I submit to you that divination has been used throughout the millenniums from almost every civilization that has ever come on the planet. And I'm going to show you divination in the Bible. Now, why I'm going to start with the Bible is because I know a lot of individuals in today's world, and especially here in America, we all read the Bible, we all use the Bible. So what I want to do, I want to show you guys divination in the Bible. Right, I want to show you guys divination in the Bible. So an individual that believes in the Bible, if divination is superstition, foolishness, and it doesn't work, then you have to deal with that within your own idea of spirituality. But I won't let anybody just point the finger at our ancestors. Hey, if it's superstitious for our ancestors, it's superstitious for everybody. Okay, so first we're going to look at what is divination. The definition I just told you guys, but let's look at it. Divination is the art or practice that seeks to foresee or foretell future events or discover hidden knowledge, usually by the interpretation of omens or by the aid of supernatural powers, unusual insight, intuitive perception. So what is divination? Divination is you're trying to seek the answer to something using supernatural means. Now, several items can be used in divination. Either individual can use cards like tarot cards. People try to use like a crystal ball. They can use rune stones, or they can use a jack, which our ancestors used, the jack. Now, the divination in the Bible, multiple concepts of divination are highlighted in the Bible, but I'm going to show you guys one just to prove what I'm saying about all cultures utilize divination, right? Look, check this out. There is something in the Bible called Urim and Thummim. Urim and Thummim, however you want to pronounce it. Now, in the Bible, when the children of Israel had partook in the Exodus and escaped from Pharaoh or whatever, and Moses was giving them the law in the wilderness, and Moses was setting up the priesthood, setting Aaron up as a priest and his children after him, and creating a Levitical priesthood and all of that. One thing that they did is they made a special type of clothing that the priest was supposed to wear. And as part of this particular clothing that the high priest was supposed to wear, it was a breastplate made out of gold. On this breastplate, there were 12 stones. Each stone, listen to me good, each stone had the name of one of the 12 tribes of Israel written on it. Now, this breastplate also had Urim and Thummim on it, on this breastplate. And this was used for divination, right? They would consult this breastplate and these Urim and Thummim stones, rocks, right? To gain answers from God, from Yahweh, from the spiritual realm. They would consult it to gain information through a supernatural means. Look, Exodus 28, 29, and 30. And Aaron shall bear the names of the children of Israel in the breastplate of judgment upon his heart. Stop right there. Breastplate of judgment, answer, decision, right? This was a divination tool that helped with judgment, that helped give an answer to something that you had a question about. And look, he says, and Aaron shall bear the names of the children of Israel in the breastplate of judgment upon his heart when he goeth in unto the holy place for a memorial before the Lord continually. And thou shalt put in the breastplate of judgment the Urim and the Thummim, and they shall be upon Aaron's heart when he goeth in before the Lord. And Aaron shall bear the judgment of the children of Israel upon his heart before the Lord continually. And when they're talking about going into the holy place before the Lord, that's not necessarily going directly before Yahweh, the God of the Israelites. That holy place is the Holy of Holies inside the tabernacle. Before they had a temple, they had the tabernacle. And the Holy of Holies was where the Ark of the Covenant, the box with the angels on top, where the tablets or the holy law, the 10 commandments, the law of God was placed. And it was said that God himself would rest on top of the ark in between the two cherubim, or in between the two angels that was on top of the ark. And this was kept inside of the Holy of Holies, the most holy place inside the tabernacle. And so what the high priest would do, the high priest would wear this breastplate with these stones on it, and he would go into the Holy of Holies. And when he says stand before the Lord or go before the Lord, he's actually going before the Ark of the Covenant, right? He's going before the Ark of the Covenant, and he would ask a question. He would inquire of God there, and the answer would be given to him on the breastplate. And the priest would have to be able to read the answer that the breastplate gave. And it appears that the breastplate, what they claim, is it would light up. Certain stones would light up in such a way that the high priest would interpret what the answer from the God was. Pure divination. Straightforward. Now look, I got this off of this Jewish website known as Chabad.org. Chabad.org. Now, this is a credible website to get information about Judaism from. This isn't a secular source. This is Jews themselves telling you the truth. Now, the image on the left, that is what, based on the description in the Bible, what this high priest uniform was supposed to look like. And you see on his chest, he has that square with those 12 stones on it. Now, each one of those stones was supposed to have a name of Israel written on it. Now, look, what were Urim and Thummim according to the Jews? In ancient Israel, when a decision of national significance was needed, the high priest was consulted. They went to the high priest. Within the fold of the high priest's breastplate were the Urim and Thummim, lights and perfections. Basically what that word means, lights and perfections, because it lit up in the divination process. According to most traditions, the Urim and Thummim were a piece of parchment with God's 4-letter name written on it. Now, I disagree with that. I don't believe Urim and Thummim was parchment because Josephus, writing in the 1st century, said that Urim and Thummim were stones as well. They were stones as well. So we're talking about rocks, right? So don't laugh when the individual ancestor has a jack that's a silver coin or a copper coin, when we can see divination in other civilizations that they using rocks. Look what it says. Its function was to serve as an oracle, divination, divining whether or not the Jewish people should take a certain course of action. Look at the bottom highlighted portion. The Kohen Gadol, or the high priest would meditate. Wait, first, let me say this. Now, let's go to when. Read that second paragraph. When its services were needed, the divination, Urim and Thummim, breastplate of judgment. When its services were needed, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, would stand facing the holy ark. Remember I told you the Ark of the Covenant, with the questioner behind him. The individual desiring an answer would ask a simple yes or no question, such as, shall we go to war? The Kohen Gadol, the high priest, would meditate until he reached divine inspiration. Then certain letters on the breastplate upon which the names of the 12 tribes were written would appear to protrude or light up, producing an answer. Clear and dry divination. This item was used for divination in ancient Israel, and it was basically different color, multicolored stones that when the high priest would utilize it, they would ask a question and it would light up and give them the answer. So is divination real or fake? And is divination good or bad? And is divination in your spiritual tradition? But I want to show you some of the similarities in this. Not saying that our ancestors got it from the Bible. It's just divination is divination, no matter what society is using it. Look, in the article that we're reading, it says it is nothing more, talking about the jack, it is nothing more than a piece of silver or copper coin capable of a very high polish. It can shine. The doctor calls it his special piece or a special piece. Look, the doctor consults his jack to ascertain the trouble and the cause of the same. What was the Urim and Thummim used for? In ancient Israel, when a decision of national significance was needed, the high priest was consulted. They consult the high priest because he has the divination tools. Just like our ancestors, when they had to deal with the bad conjurer, they had a question about how were they conjured, who did it, and how can they fix it. They wouldn't actually go to the high priest because they didn't have a high priest. They had the conjurer. They had the hoodoo doctor, the root worker, equivalent to the high priest in Israelite culture. Look, they say, after hearing the patient's story of the malady that has fallen upon his body, the doctor takes his jack from his pocket and retires to some secret place for a consultation with that dreadful and all-powerful instrument. So the doctor would get the jack, the divination item, and retire to a secret place. What did they do in Israel? They went into the Holy of Holies, a secret special place, to consult or ask the question of the gods, of the spirit realm, and get their answer through divination. So is divination real or fake, good or bad? You have to answer yourself. We got a comment. Eric Davis says, I believe the Urim and Thummim were crystals. Hey, that's very, very possible because like I say, see on this source, Chabad, they try to wiggle away from the supernatural reality of it and try to say that, it was parchment with Yahweh written on it, the 4 letters of the name of God. But when you look into Josephus's work, they call them some type of stones, which could very well be crystals, and they lit up. A crystal can light up when the light hits it. They lit up. Parchment ain't lighting up, fam. Parchment is not lighting up. It's not lighting up. So it could definitely be crystals. I could definitely go with that. I could definitely go with that. And it was a divination tool, just like the jack. Okay, just like the jack. So look, the article goes on to say, to cast a spell, the conjure bag, bottle, or box must be left on the premises of the person sought. Whichever one of the instruments is used may be left under the steps of the house, on the mantelpiece, in the dining room, or about the barnyard. It is a matter of preference with the doctor as to whether he uses the bag, the bottle, or the box. The person caught is not always the one sought. The spell may fall on some member of his family, on some of his livestock, on his house, and cause it to burn, or on his lands and cause them not to bring forth crops. So when we're talking about hoodoo, when we're talking about conjure, when we're talking about root work, there is a lot of variety in how our ancestors use this practice. Okay, we didn't have a hoodoo Bible or a conjure Bible that said you must do it this way. It must be a bag. It must be this herb. It must be this, because the power of it is this type of spiritual science can be used in whatever area a person is in. The same herbs don't grow in Washington, D.C. and in South Carolina. And the same herbs don't grow in West Africa and East Africa. The same plants don't grow in North Africa and in Texas. Okay, there's different plants, there's different herbs, there's different roots, there's different fauna. And the material that one may be able to gather, all minerals aren't everywhere on the earth. That's why to make something like a cell phone, they have to get something from Africa, they have to get something from here, they have to get something from here, a mineral from here, a mineral from there, and bring all those things together to create a simple cell phone. So if an individual is confined to a particular area, they may not have access to what you have in your area. I'm in Texas. The minerals, the plants, the animal life may be different from where you're at in, let's say, California, South Carolina, Washington, D.C., or something like that. So the idea is what matters. It is the use of the wildlife, the plant life to make the conjure work. So that's why you see they're saying the bag, the bottle, or the box may be used. Different conjure items can be used. Okay, because a lot of it boils down to the person that's doing the conjure themselves. An individual human holds some type of connection to the spiritual realm and can access those spiritual powers. Some people more easily than others. So there is variation in how people work conjure and work hoodoo, and that's because there's not a Bible to a hoodoo Bible, and that's because in whatever area you are at, you can use herbs to heal yourself, right? There's going to be something there that you can use to heal yourself and ward off evil, and you just have to figure out what that is and use it. We got another comment. Welcome to the chat. Alpha Plus says, thanks for your great wisdom. Keep it coming. No doubt. Thank you for tapping in, and I appreciate that. I appreciate anybody that watch. Appreciate anybody that's interested. You know what I mean? And I'm definitely going to keep these videos coming. And Eric Davis once again says, you are on the money, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And anything that you guys want to add, hey, nobody knows it all. Anything that you guys want to add, hey, throw it in the chat. I learned from reading. I learned from listening to others as well. Life is all about acquiring knowledge. We acquire knowledge from the cradle to the grave. So I appreciate the input. Thank you all for watching. I don't know if you male or female, but thank you guys, girls, whoever. Thank you all for watching. But if you notice, they're talking about casting a spell and whatnot. And again, they're going to try to say that this is all superstition. But magic, divination, cursing people and blessing people, this is all ancient knowledge. This is all ancient knowledge that carried cultures for thousands of years, right? Thousands of years. They just want to break you from that spiritual connection that you may have if you actually believe in some of this stuff. So what I want to do real quick, I'm going to show you. Now we're kind of, like I say, we're going to start getting into some of this, the bad conjure, and how the bad conjure fights with the good conjure. Now, placing curses on people, which is what got this guy killed in South Carolina. This bad conjure is like placing a curse on somebody. And it's placing a curse on somebody using magic or supernatural means. Now, this type of stuff has existed for thousands of years, but there are similarities that run through it, right? There are similarities in what our ancestors practiced that you can find thousands of years ago, the same ideas. Now, there is something in the ancient Greek world. We went to Israel. Now let's go to the Greco-Roman world. There is something known as a curse tablets that they have found. And what these curse tablets are individuals have taken particular items, written things on them like names or particular curses of the people that they wanted to affect. And they would place these items in certain areas. Just like when we're reading about our ancestors, when an individual wanted to do a bad conjure, they could use the bag, the bottle. Hold on, let's look at it. Let's look at it. To cast the spell, the conjure bag, bottle, or box must be left on the premises of the person sought. Whichever one of the instruments is used may be left in whatever place that they want to leave it in. So they would use something, and that item would be used to cast a spell or a negative curse on the individual that they're trying to affect. And this is ancient knowledge that a lot of ancient cultures used and knew about. And these curse tablets are evidence of it. Look, a curse tablet is a small tablet with a curse written on it from the Greco-Roman world. Its name originated from the Greek and Latin words for pierce and bind. The tablets were used to ask the gods, play spirits, or the deceased to perform an action on a person or object, or otherwise compel the subject of the curse. So the item was used to curse, negatively conjure someone. Curse tablets are typically very thin sheets of lead with the text scratched on in tiny letters. They were then often rolled, folded, or pierced with nails, and the tablets were then usually placed beneath the ground. So there's a specific way you create the curse tablet, and you have specific places that you are supposed to put it. Look, underground, either buried in graves or tombs, thrown into wells or pools, sequestered in underground sanctuaries, or nailed to the walls of temples. Tablets were also used for love spells and were used in this manner when they were placed inside the home of the desired target. So the concept is having an item that effectively puts the curse on the intended target. And these items were used in various ways and in various methods throughout many societies, not just our ancestors on the plantations. So these curse tablets are they're very similar to items used for conjuring. Now look, check this out. We're going to be talking about some of the curious ingredients that is used in the conjure bag, the bottle, or the box. What constituted a conjure bag or a conjure bottle? What did our ancestors use? It says the instruments used, whether bag, bottle, or box, contains a supply of curious ingredients, such as a pinch of red dirt taken from the grave of some ancestor who was a noted conjure doctor in his or her day. Now let's stop right there. Now, graveyard dirt was very important to the practitioner of hoodoo and the conjure worker. Now, graveyard dirt in and of itself has been big in conjuring magic, curses, and blessings for thousands of years. Notice when we read about the curse tablets, they say that they are usually placed beneath the ground, either buried in graves or tombs. Why buried in graves or tombs? Because they wanted to elicit the power of the underworld, the spiritual powers in the next realm. And sometimes in specific tombs or specific graves of an individual who was known to be a powerful practitioner of that spiritual system while they were in life. And so the same way these curse tablets would be buried in graves and in tombs to get that power that's associated with the graveyard, because the graveyard is seen as a crossing point between this life and the next, right? The physical world and the spiritual world, the land of the living and the land of the dead, this realm and the next realm. The graveyard has always symbolized those types of portals or portways. The curse tablet would be buried in graves and tombs. And so you see this idea kind of manifesting as well with our ancestors using graveyard dirt. And they would use some of the graveyard dirt from an ancestor who was a noted conjurer. Why? To get not only some of the residual power from that particular ancestor, but to also connect the conjure with the next realm. The graveyard dirt connects the conjure to the next realm. These items aren't random. They go on to say, also included a small piece of burnt rod, an inch or more long, known as the conjure rod, a stick of silkweed, and a bit of Samson's snake root, roots and herbs. In addition to these, a very clever practitioner often has a hawk's foot, a toad's eye, and lizard's tongue. Remember, it's not just herbs, plants, and flowers and roots. They also utilize the animal life that's in the area. That's why, again, different hoodoo practitioners utilize different methods, because all animal life is not the same in every area. Just like all fauna life, plant life, root life is not the same in every area. You have to use what's available to you. Look, when once the instrument of devilment is placed for a person, it is bad luck to move it before the spell has fallen on the right one. The hoodoo doctor can give any person power to use the instrument provided the jack is satisfied. To satisfy the jack, remember the jack is the divination tool. To satisfy the jack, money must come. The doctor looks the jack in the face until the necessary amount has been handed over and the directions for the use of the bag, box, or bottle are given. By the use of the instrument and the aid of the doctor, any Negro can rid himself of a troublesome rival in business or in love by throwing a fatal spell on him. Remember, we was looking at the ancient Greeks. They said that, where was it at? The tablets were also used for love spells, and when used in this manner, they were placed inside the home of the desired target. So in addition to healing, in addition to curses, these items were also used in matters of love spells, love potions, to make someone fall in love with you or to make them fall out of love with somebody else. These are some of the similarities that have existed for thousands of years. So what they're saying is, let's say I have a problem with you. I go to a hoodoo practitioner or a conjurer. Everybody didn't have the ability to do this. It was special people with the abilities to do this, and there was someone who was faking and fronting as well. But I would go to the individual conjurer, and I would say, okay, look, I have problems with this person right here. I need something to put a bad conjure or a curse on that individual. Now, they would create a conjure bag or a conjure box or a conjure bottle for me with these ingredients inside of it, right? Just like making the curse tablet. And I would take that and put it in a particular area. And this item was supposed to put the curse on the individual that I wanted it to affect. Now, they're saying that sometimes, since it was not like, I guess, an exact science, you could put the bag conjure item in an area, And instead of the bad curse falling on that person immediately, it may fall on a family member, or it may fall on some of their livestock. How many times have you heard of like curses, and a person may curse a person's land? They may curse a person's livestock. They may curse a person's business, or they may try to put a curse on them to cause one of their family members to perish. Now, sometimes I may try to conjure you, right? And this is why individuals have to be careful. I may try to conjure you and inadvertently affect one of your family members, okay? Inadvertently affect one of your family members who I wasn't particularly targeting. Okay, and so that too is another reason why individual needs to be careful when they're trying to deal with this type of stuff. But this was some of the challenges that our ancestors faced, and when we're talking about conjuring and whatnot, this was some of the challenges that they faced. So look, they say, however, if the case is taken in time, another conjure doctor of ability can remove the spell. So it's always that good versus evil. Somebody could put an evil conjure on you. You have to go to somebody to break that spell. Now, look, check this out. When we're talking about like this is like magic, okay? This is magic. And this is an article I got offline from thecollector.com talking about magic in ancient Greece and Rome. Now, look, they say ancient examples of magic can be loosely grouped into two categories. Black magic, largely associated with inflicting harm, and white magic, associated with providing benefits or forms of protection. Curse tablets definitely fall into the former category. Remember, anytime you're dealing with conjure as well, which is closely linked to what people have been doing for thousands of years, it can be good or it can be bad, just like a human being. You can use it for good, you can use it for evil. And so, look, they say these tablets were normally thin pieces of lead inscribed. Well, I basically just read that in that other source. Let's get some more information on magic real quick and just see how it correlates to what our ancestors were doing. This science has been around for thousands of years. Look, they say the Greek tablets. No. Let's skip that. Amulets, okay? Amulets were widely used across the classical world. Listen, these objects provide a prime example of white magic, what they're calling the good magic, since they were believed to cure ailments and offer protection to the wearer or user. Examples of such amulets include plants, flowers, animal teeth, thin slivers of animal bone, or precious metals known as lamellae, and decorative jewelry made from engraved tablets or semi-precious stones. Some amulets were inscribed with prayers or incantations, and this can provide us with the context for the object and what it might have been used for. So even in the classical world, when they were performing magic or the good magic to cure somebody or protect them, these amulets included what? Plants, flowers, animal teeth, thin slivers, of animal bone, or precious metals, or jewelry, or stones. Remember, the Israelites was using stones for divination. And our ancestors, when they're talking about hoodoo and when they're talking about conjure, what did they use? It was called root work. Root work. They used plants, they used herbs, they used roots, and they also used animal parts. Remember, they said in the article, in addition to these, the silkweed and the snake root, in addition to these, a very clever practitioner often has a hawk's foot, a toad's eye, and a lizard's tongue, right? That can be used in the conjure. Now, these things are known as amulets because when an individual gives you something like a bag or something that you can wear as a necklace that's supposed to heal you or protect you. Protect you from what? Protect you from the negative curses or the negative conjure or the negative magic of someone else, right? The exact same thing spanning thousands of years. Look, practitioners of magic would often prescribe charms or spoken spells to be used with the amulet. Plato tells us of a remedy used by Socrates to cure headaches, which consisted of acquiring a special type of leaf followed by a spoken spell. So Plato tells us about Socrates curing a headache with a spell and a special type of leaf. Curing a headache, right? Remember, the very beginning, when I was showing you what the ancestors were talking about, this ancestor told us, let me go all the way back, that cherry bark, what would make the blood so bitter, no fever, never, couldn't stand it. Okay? The same exact concept, using the herbs, roots, plants available to heal someone, but they mixed it with spells because words also have power. Words have power. Life and death is in the tongue. You can speak life or you can speak death. That's real. And it's been real for thousands of years. Okay? So what our ancestors, they're not ignorant, foolish slaves on the plantation. They're using ancient science. But obviously in South Carolina, they may have access to cherry bark that they can use for a fever. Now, I don't know if Socrates in the Greek world would have had access to that, but we clearly see that Socrates used a special type of leaf followed by a spoken spell, just like what our ancestors was doing. The same soup warmed over. So now let's get into the murder plot, because what I want to show you guys is, of course, you can use it for good or evil. Some of our ancestors used it for evil, and they suffered horribly for it. Horribly for it. So any one of you thinking about using hoodoo or conjuring, beware of using bad conjure. Look, the article says, this is the same article, in York County, South Carolina, on June 13th last, a horrible and blood-curdling murder was committed by two Negroes, Amzie Dunavant and Frank Castles. They killed an old Negro by the name of Ben Gore. Now, Ben Gore, you're going to see, is the conjurer who negatively conjured these two gentlemen. The article says they had been told that Gore was trying to catch them with this conjure trick. The murder came about in this way. Sometime early in last April, the child of Amzie Dunavant sickened and died. When the child first showed signs of being afflicted, Dunavant went to old Nellie Wagner, a woman who bears the reputation of being a gifted conjure doctor. So this man's daughter gets sick, and since he's known about hoodoo, he's known about conjure, he knows that if they're negatively conjured, he has to go to the good conjure worker to break the spell. So he goes to a conjure woman named Nellie Wagner, who has a reputation for helping people who have curses put on them. It goes on to say, at first, she told Dunavant that the signs were not right for her to practice and asked him to come again soon. He did so. When he went the second time, the woman heard his story and tried her jack. So apparently, when he goes to her the first time, she goes into her secret place, she pulls out her jack, she inquires of the spirit realm, but she gets no answer through her divination tool, the jack, that she can decipher. So unfortunately, she has to tell him, look, I don't have any answer for you. There's not no signs for me to really answer you right now, or to offer you any type of advice or to help you. You're gonna have to leave and come back again. So Dunavant left, was gone for a while, and then he ended up coming back. His daughter still showed no signs of getting well, so he came back to Nellie Wagner to seek her services again. This time, it says, drawing the when he went the second time, the woman heard his story and tried her jack, the divination item. Drawing the piece of silver coin from her pocket, she walked around the house, rubbing it on her dress. Soon she returned with the jack in her hand and said to Donovan, who had waited for her at the front door, "Look in there and see if you don't see the picture of old Ben Gore. He is the man that tricked your child, and he was after you." Donovan looked and saw the picture. It seemed to him that it was plainly written there. So whether we believe it or not, we're just going to look at the story. So the conjure woman gets her jack, the shiny silver coin that's available for a high polish. She walks around the room. Most likely, she says her words, her ritualistic words. She rubs it on her dress, rubs it on her dress, rubs it on her dress to get that high shine, and then she looks in it. At this point, when she looks into the jack, the divination item, the face of the man responsible begins to appear. She takes it to Donovan and shows it to him, and she says, "Look, that looks like Ben Gore." He looks at it. He obviously sees Ben Gore too. It's not like he didn't get to look at it. He looked at it. So there was obviously some type of image that appeared in the jack. And so she tells him that, yes, the conjure fell on your daughter, but old Ben Gore was trying to conjure you. Remember, you could try to put a curse on somebody, a conjure on somebody, and you may inadvertently get them, their land, their business, or a family member. And unfortunately, this conjure landed on Amazi Dudovant's child, okay, on his child, unfortunately. And so the conjure woman basically tells him, so look, Nellie, the conjure woman, then prescribed for the child, but under protest, declaring that it was a waste of medicine to try to save the child while old Ben Gore's conjure bag was set for Donovan. So she's saying that, yes, I can create a remedy with herbs and whatnot, but if the conjure bag is still in place, wherever he put the conjure bag, buried around your house, in your house, under the steps, wherever this conjure bag is, without that, it's going to be kind of hard to break the curse. If you think about it in ancient times, when they would have that curse tablet or whatever, without removing that curse tablet from the place that they put it, that curse would actually play out. And a lot of times when you're looking into hoodoo and you're looking into conjure, they always wanted the item that put the bad conjure on a person, be it a hat, be it a bag, be it a makisi, be it you got a lock of their hair and you tied it to something that's supposed to represent the image of that person. It was imperative that they got their hands on the item that was basically opening up the negative aspects from the spirit world on that person. So the conjure woman told him, look, I can prescribe some medicine for the child, but if I don't get my hands on that conjure bag that he set out for you, then it's just gonna be a waste of time. It's just gonna be a waste of time. The magic will still be in effect. Okay. So it goes on to say, the medicine she gave was to be distributed about the house in the following manner: some put under the steps, some up the chimney, and a little about the dining room, trying to protect the entire house. The child was to take a dose from a spoon, gripping the spoon in its teeth to make the medicine effective. What was left in the bottle was to be kept on the left side of the hearth. The medicine was a murky-looking liquid. And what did it consist of? A bunch of herbs went with it. But with it all, the child died. So this man's child dies, and this conjure woman has told him that the person who's responsible is Ben Gore. And Ben Gore was trying to conjure you, but the negative conjure fell on your child. And so now you can imagine this guy is dealing with the anger, frustration, grief, he's mourning the life of his child that was taken from him by this conjure man. Look, it goes on to say, Dunavant became alarmed and feared Gore when he saw that this man conjure could actually bring on death. It was only a question of time until the spell would fall on him and death would be certain. So he knows that the conjure is for him, so he's feeling like he could die as well. So look, about the time Dunavant's child died, Frank Castles, a friend of his, had a fine milch cow go dry without apparent cause. A conjurer of no mean reputation told Castles that Ben Gore had placed a trick for him, but had caught his cow instead. So now we have another man, Frank Castles, whose cow goes dry and stopped producing milk, and he can't figure out why. So, much like Dunavant, he goes to another conjurer. He doesn't go to Nelly. He goes to a different conjurer, and this conjurer, using the methods of divination, probably had a jack as well, tells him that it's Ben Gore. So now we have Ben Gore implemented in another conjure, and this conjure was directed at Frank Castles, but it affected his cow instead of affecting him. Look, Dunavant and Castles consulted with each other and decided to do away with old Ben, but they feared his power and knew not how to kill him. Nevertheless, on the night of June 13th at 11:30 o'clock, Frank and Amzi, accompanied by Angus Castles, a Negro boy of 14 years, went to the home of Ben Gore. So Angus Castles, this Negro boy of 14, apparently he looks like he's related to Frank Castles because they have the same name. We don't know if that's his child or brother or what, but they appear to have some type of relation. So now you have the two men affected by the evil conjurer Ben Gore. You have Dunavant and you have Castles, and you have a 14-year-old boy named Angus Castles who have decided that they are going to kill Ben Gore for his negative conjures. Look, they say they went to the home of Ben Gore, called him out, threw him to the ground, tied a rope around his neck, and choked him to death, while his body still jerked and writhed in the agonies of the awful death. His feet were tied to his hands with a strong twine. Now, even in how they killed him, they don't explicitly say this, but I'm of the opinion that they killed him in a ritualistic way, and they killed him in a ritualistic way which they may have been told to affect this murder by another conjurer. Because look, they say that they wanted to kill him, but they feared his powers and they didn't know how to kill him. So the way in which they killed him was probably told to them by a conjurer. Why do I say that? Because they grabbed him, they threw him to the ground, they tied a rope around his neck, and they choked him to death. And while they were choking him to death, they tied his feet to his hands, right? And you can imagine them hog tying the man, tying his hands to his feet behind his back with a strong twine. Now, why do I think that is a ritualistic murder? Now, this came from the same article I showed earlier about magic and amulets in the ancient world. Now, in the ancient world, they would also use things like voodoo dolls. Now, I want you to notice something. You see that voodoo doll, and that's not actually from voodoo, that's from the ancient world, but they would create figurines, right? They would create figurines of the individual that they wanted to hoodoo, and they would put them in a particular position, a binding position. Remember, the word that they use for curse tablet is meant to pierce or bind. Pierce or bind up the individual that they were trying to curse. And so they would find a lot of figurines that were made of mud or clay or wax, and they would put them in a position to where their hands and feet were bound together, and they would pierce them in particular parts of their body. Now look what the article says. Voodoo figurines or dolls sometimes accompanied curse tablets. The Egyptians are thought to have first used such dolls as early as 2000 BC. And remember, these practices go back thousands of years. made of wax in the likeness of an enemy. Figurines were buried in graves, there's graves again, so that they might receive harsh treatment from the god of the afterlife, Osiris. Now look at this. In Greece, examples have been discovered which date from the 4th century BC. The dolls are mostly made of mud, wax, or lead, and many of the figures have their arms bound behind their backs, presumably to emphasize the binding process referred to in many cursed tablets. So what I believe they were doing when they bound their hands and feet behind being gored, the conjure man, was they were trying to bind him up, bind up his powers so that his powers would not overcome them and still kill them. Remember, there is still the matter of the hoodoo that he put on them that killed one man's child and made one man's cow go dry. So as opposed to having a voodoo figurine, a doll of Ben Gore to bind up him and his magic, they literally bound up his body. This was a ritualistic murder. Look, they called him out, threw him to the ground, and tied a rope around his neck and choked him to death. While his body still jerked and writhed in the agonies of the awful death, his feet were tied to his hands with a strong twine. So he was tied and bound, binding up his evil, wicked powers. They go on to say, then his slayers left him and searched the pockets of his clothes, an old trunk, and a closet in the house for his medicines and herbs, but they found nothing. So then they proceeded to try to find the conjure bag or the conjure item that they used on him, but they were not able to find it because he probably buried it somewhere, possibly buried it in a graveyard, or possibly buried it somewhere close by their houses or in the fields around their houses. Look, they say, hold on. They then say, they then ran a fence rail under the ropes and bore the body of Ben to an old unused well a quarter of a mile away and threw it into the depths below. His body was covered with heavy stones rolled in from the surface by the murderers. So they bind him up like they saw some of the voodoo figurines from ancient Greece would bind the individual up, and then they threw his body into a well. Now, there's multiple ways that you can conceal a body or cover up a murder, but they chose to throw his body into a well. I think that was a part of the ritual as well. Look at the bottom paragraph when they're talking about the curse tablets. These tablets were normally thin pieces of lead inscribed with a curse against an enemy, which could then be folded and often sealed and pierced with a nail. The curses were then buried, commonly in bodies of water or wells, and also in graves. So these curse tablets were often thrown inside of wells. And these curse tablets were also commonly accompanied by voodoo dolls that were bound. And so you have these individuals killing this conjure man. They bind him up physically and they throw him into a well. This is all evidence of powerful magic trying to be used. Look, they bore the body to an old unused well a quarter of a mile away and threw it into the depths below. Now, I'm willing to bet money that the conjurers that he went to, Nelly, and the other conjurer that Castles went to, when they told him that they wanted to do away with Ben Gore, but they were afraid of his powers, they likely told him, okay, if you want to kill him and defeat the powers that he has, this is the way that you have to kill him. When you kill him, bind up his hands and his feet behind his back, toss the body inside of a well. it could actually be a coincidence, but I don't believe it was a coincidence. I believe this is all magic practices. Now look, they go on to say his body was covered with heavy stones rolled in from the surface by the murderers. For several weeks, the crime was known to none except Amzi, Frank, and Anglius. Gore was accustomed to going off for weeks at a time, and even his wife claimed that she was not uneasy about him. But the boy, Anglius, gave the whole thing away and caused the arrest of Frank and Amzi. So I guess witnessing the murder, being a part of the murder, the 14-year-old boy went heavy on his conscience. He couldn't really deal with it. He spilled the beans. When he spilled the beans, he told what happened, and basically they all get arrested. Amzi and Frank get arrested. But look, they end up saying at the November term of York County Court, they were tried and convicted of murder. On January 6th, they were hanged. It is the opinion of many that Donovan and Castles were honestly afraid of being Gore and killed him to keep from being killed by his conjure tricks. So Ben Gore was one of the negative or evil conjurers, and he tried to conjure these two men, ended up killing the child of one and affecting the cow of another. And he in turn was killed in a ritualistic way. And both of these men, they were tried and they were hanged, they were hung. And so while they were trying to avoid being killed by Ben Gore's evil conjure, they ended up being killed as well. So the takeaway from this story time is as individuals study hoodoo, root work, and they study and conjure, always remember that it can be used for good or evil. It can be used to heal. It can be used to harm. It can be used to bless. It can be used to curse. It can be used to protect. It can be used to tear down. Okay. And a lot of times when an individual performs a negative conjure on you, you need to go to a good conjurer to get that conjure off of you. And so there are some times when if individuals start practicing this, we get upset a lot. Who knows what Amzi Donovan and Frank Castles did to Ben Gore to make him want to conjure them in the first place? Why did he want them dead? It's hard to say because they weren't able to ask him, because when all of this unfolded, of course, he was dead at the bottom of a well. But what did they do to him that caused him to want to murder them? You see, and it's almost like not like karma, but evil begets evil, so to speak. You do bad to somebody, you treat somebody wrong, you treat somebody not right, you disrespect them, and then they seek to get revenge. And then them seeking to get revenge, they mess over you, and then you seek to get revenge on them, and it just becomes a cycle, right? It just becomes a cycle of negativity, a cycle of hate, and a lot of people end up losing their lives in the process. Frank Donovan's child lost their life. Frank Donovan lost his life. I mean, Amzi Donovan lost his life. Frank Castles lost his life. The child, I don't know if he was actually arrested, but he'll never be the same after seeing such a brutal murder. And also Ben Gore, he lost his life as well. And then who knows what happened with his wife, because 9 times out of 10, he was probably the breadwinner in that relationship. And he was married. And then that left his wife a widow. So many families were affected. So I would just advise people to beware. There are dangers associated with hoodoo, and those dangers are individuals can use it for evil. They can use it for wickedness, and they can use it to try to curse and harm people, right? And they can sometimes harm the unintended target. And when they use it in this manner, it can bring bad back on them, because you never know how someone will respond. So this has been another story time. South Carolina man murdered for conjuring. The dangers of hoodoo. As always, I hope you guys heard something that you never heard before. I hope I helped to shed more light, shed more light on what our ancestors believed, what our ancestors taught, and how our ancestors lived and how our ancestors dealt with their time on those slave plantations. Again, I want to make this the premier channel for learning the history of our ancestors from the perspective of our ancestors themselves. Now, before I actually sign off, I want to show you guys something. Anybody that wants to support the channel, I call myself the real bookworm. Now that's because I read all the time. I read anything I can get my hands on, but I'm actually a writer. That's why I call myself the chief scribe. I'm actually a writer, and I have 16 published works out right now. Right? So if you would like to support, my best-selling urban fiction novel is out on Amazon. It's known as Suicide Note. Suicide Note by Matthew Daniels. I'm going to show you guys. Give me just a second. Give me just a second to share my screen one more time. Just hang out with me for 2 more minutes. If you don't mind, hang out with me for 2 more minutes, okay? Greatly appreciate it. All right, what I want you guys to do, go to Amazon.com. I want you to type in Suicide Note by Matthew Daniels. Now, look, that's the cover. And what I'm going to do while I'm doing that, I'm going to put the link to the book. I'm going to put the link to the book in the chat. I'm going to put the link to the book in the chat. So anybody that wants to support, you can support by purchasing this book. It's an urban fiction novel. Hold on just a second. Let me get that in the chat. Okay. There's the link to the book right there. Now I'm going to read the synopsis for you real quick, and we're going to get out of here. It says, growing up on the rough streets of Dickinson, Texas, in one of the worst neighborhoods in the city, a young man by the name of A.B. is doing everything in his power to make it out of his criminal lifestyle before it kills him. Never really knowing his father and having a drug-addicted mother, A.B. and his younger sister have lived in poverty all of their lives. At a young age, A.B. vows to change all of that, and he's willing to do any and everything to achieve his goals, even if that means he must sell drugs to his community, rob anyone with $1, and also murder anyone who gets in his way. In his attempts to get rich and legit, A.B. runs into a street-smart older white woman named Layla, who appears to be everything he wanted and more. With Layla's help, the two of them come up with a scheme to end all schemes. The pair goes on a crime spree in Galveston County that leaves enemies dead, police officers baffled, gang members wanting their heads on a platter, and their roller coaster Bonnie and Clyde type romance even leaves A.B. suspicious of Layla's real intentions. Does she really love him? Does she really want to see him succeed? Will the two of them ride off into the sunset with enough cold hard cash to live a lavish lifestyle and never look back? Or will this whirlwind romance / criminal enterprise usher young A.B. into an early grave? You have to read his Suicide Note to find out. So if you like to read, you can hit that link, order my book, Suicide Note, I'm telling you, one of the hottest urban fiction novels out there on the market right now today. Now, I know a lot of people like to go through Amazon. That's why I put the link to Amazon in the chat. But if you would like to get a signed copy from me, directly from me, for $20, no shipping and handling within the U.S. If you would like a signed if you would like a signed copy, just leave a comment and I'll give you a link to a website that's run by my wife, where I sell my books on. And so you can go to that website. Matter of fact, I'm gonna just put the website. I'm gonna put the link to the website in the chat. If you want a signed copy of the book, you can go to a website. My wife's website is called dandyandbigherm.com. Okay. It's a website that my wife used to use to sell her TikTok items, her items that she would sell on TikTok. And so I ended up utilizing this same website to sell my books, because I currently don't have a website of my own. So okay, I just put that link in the chat as well. So if you would like a signed copy directly from me, you can hit that website. Or if you would just like to order it off of Amazon, I put the link to Amazon as well. And I would greatly appreciate that support. So as always, you've been watching Matthew Daniels TV. I'm your brother Matthew Daniels, the writer, author, scribe, and bookworm. But I'm not just a bookworm, world. I am the real bookworm. Make sure you get it right. I'm doing the book game like it ain't never been done before, and I'm doing the book game like it'll probably never be done again. And as always, family, may your name live on forever, and may your memory, family, never die. Thanks for watching. Till next time, I'm out.